On a calm April night in 1971, 7 young people left the Tacoma waterfront for what was supposed to be a short sail. They weren't heading out into open ocean, they weren't caught in a storm, and they weren't planning to be gone long. But by the next day, they were missing. And despite one of the most extensive searches ever conducted in Puget Sound at the time, not a single trace of them, or the boat, was ever found. This is the story of the missing WSU students. Hello, friends. My name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders, where we explore the unsolved cases that still haunt America. In the spring of 1971, Western Washington was a place defined by its waterways. Puget Sound wasn't just scenic, it was part of daily life. Ferries, fishing boats, sailboats, they moved constantly through those waters. And for those familiar with the area, especially experienced boaters, the Sound was considered manageable, even predictable under normal conditions. That week, Seattle was hosting a convention for the Intercollegiate Knights, a college service fraternity. Students from across the region had gathered, many of them young, ambitious, and just beginning to shape their futures. Among them were 7 individuals who would soon be at the center of a mystery that has never been solved. They'd spent a week together at the convention. By all accounts, it had been a good week, the kind of week where friendships form quickly, where strangers start to feel familiar. Brian Williams, 24, was a senior at Washington State University. He was described as an experienced sailor, an outdoorsman, and someone who was on the verge of starting his career. Brian wasn't just a student on a lark. He was the kind of guy you trusted with your life on the water. He knew the tides, he knew the boat, and he knew when to turn back. That's what makes the silence that followed so deafening. Also with him were Gary Oman, James Dickinson, Dennis Newton, Brian Wilson, and Robert Sherwood, most of them students at Washington State University. Also, Barbara Kamerick, a 23-year-old nursing student at Columbia Basin College. Other students attending that week recalled it was a normal conference. Nothing unusual, nothing that stood out, until that final night. On the evening of April 14, 1971, after the convention had ended, the group made their way to Tacoma. The plan was simple. They were going to go out for a short sail, maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, just enough time to get a short cruise in and come back. Brian's family saw them off around 9 p.m. from what is now known as the Breakwater Marina. At the Tacoma Yacht Club, a guard later reported that he had been told the same thing. The boat would only be gone a few hours. The vessel itself was a 22-foot Catalina sailboat owned by Brian's family. It was considered seaworthy, equipped with an auxiliary engine, flotation cushions, and life preservers. Sitting at the waterline with 7 adults on board, she would have ridden low. It wasn't a large boat, but it was not unusual for a group like this to take it out for a short trip in the protected waters. Imagine 7 college students, laughing, watching the Tacoma skyline shrink behind them, unaware that they were sailing into oblivion. No one on the shore watching them leave would have thought twice about it. Their intended route likely included Commencement Bay and Dalco Passage, areas well within Puget Sound, not far from shore and heavily traveled. It was a controlled environment, a familiar setting, and under normal conditions, a trip like this would have been routine. But that night, something happened, and whatever it was, it happened fast. When the group didn't return within a few hours, concern grew quickly. By Thursday afternoon, the Coast Guard had been notified and search operations began. What followed was not a small local effort. It was extensive, not the kind of search that misses something obvious. Air and sea units were deployed almost immediately. Helicopters, patrol boats, fixed-wing aircraft. Auxiliary flotillas joined in. At its peak, dozens of vessels, and by some accounts hundreds of boats, were involved in the search. They covered a wide area of Puget Sound, from Olympia to the San Juan Islands, and eventually narrowed their focus back toward Tacoma. The conditions during those days were nearly ideal. Moderate winds, no storms, no unusual weather patterns that would explain a sudden emergency. And the boat itself was not considered fragile. It was described as stable, well-constructed, and capable of handling those waters. Still, the search turned up nothing. No distress signal, no confirmed sightings after they left the dock. Families waited on shore. At first it was patience, then concern, and then something heavier. At one point, debris was spotted in the water. something that could have provided answers, but it was quickly determined to be unrelated to the missing boat. As the days passed, the search began to scale back. Officials had to make a difficult decision. After 6 days of searching, the Coast Guard suspended the operation. Their conclusion was simple and deeply disturbing. They believed the boat had gone down, but if it had gone down without leaving a trace. To this day, no one knows what happened on Puget Sound that night. The group was only supposed to be gone a short time. The weather offered no explanation. The boat was equipped with safety gear, and the area they traveled was thoroughly searched multiple times. So how does a 22-foot sailboat disappear without debris? Searchers weren't just looking for a boat, they were looking for anything that floats. A single orange life vest, a seat cushion, an oil slick. Even in the worst shipwrecks, the sea usually gives something back. But Puget Sound kept it all. It didn't just sink them, it swallowed the evidence whole, as if they'd never been there at all. There were also conflicting information about the boat itself. Early reports described it as a deep-keel vessel, stable and difficult to capsize. Later, it was identified as a centerboard design, which can be more vulnerable under certain conditions. If it was a centerboard boat, it had a pivot point. One wrong move, one sudden shift in weight from 7 people, and that stability vanishes. But even a capsized boat stays afloat for a time. It doesn't just disappear out of existence. But even if the boat had capsized, there should have been something, some sign, some evidence that they had been there, and yet there wasn't. In the end, the official explanation was that the boat had gone down without a trace. But for the families, and for those who have looked back on the case over the years, that explanation has never fully answered the question, because this wasn't open ocean. This wasn't a storm. This was a short trip in familiar waters, under calm conditions, and 7 people vanished. 7 people who left the dock on a calm April night, and who told someone they'd be back in a couple of hours. Somewhere between the dock and the darkness, something went wrong, and the water kept every secret. If you have any thoughts or theories on this case, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.